Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay. Today we're going to be making a coconut lime melt and pour soap. This is our fragrance we're going to use. It is from FragranceBuddy.com. It's very strong, but it's great for soap. We're going to use 3 different layers of soap to make this. We're going to use our coconut milk soap base and our palm oil free glycerin soap base. So we are going to use the coconut milk for the bottom layer. We're going to use both of them for a small center layer, and then use the palm oil free glycerin layer for the top layer. So we need 3 different bowls because we're doing 3 different layers of soap. We're going to use this mica color to color the bottom layer. We're using just a very small amount of it to give it a creamy color instead of white. We are going to use the dark brown mica powder to do a small line in the center. And then we're going to use the green mica powder to do the clear glycerin top layer. We're also going to use this coconut husk here. I've shredded it up with my fingers. We're going to put that into the glycerin soap base on the top to give it some texture and to give it some exfoliation. So we need a spray bottle full of rubbing alcohol. This is used to spray between the layers. It helps get rid of bubbles and it helps the layers stick together. You're going to need a cutting board and a cutting tool. The soap mold that I have that I'll show you later comes with this cutting tool. It's a pretty good deal. If you don't have a cutting tool, that's fine. You can use a knife as well. I just prefer to use this because when you push down, it gives you a pretty even cut. You will also need a cutting surface and a cutting knife. This is to take the soap base and we're going to cut it into 1-inch pieces to make it easier to melt down. All right, let's get started. Make some beautiful soap. Now that we've cut our soap into roughly 1-inch pieces, we're going to have to melt it. So the bottom layer is the one we're going to start with. That one's going to be the white coconut milk. We're going to microwave it for 30 seconds and then 10-second intervals with stirring to make sure it's completely melted. Now we have our melted soap base. So what we're going to do is add in our fragrance. I typically do 3 capfuls or so per layer of soap, so you'll end up using a good portion of the bottle. So let's do that. We got 1, 2, and 3. Let's give it a good stir and see if that's the right amount that we want. Okay, so we have our scent mixed in really well. Now we're going to use this coppery mica powder. Mica powder is a very strong colorant, so we're going to use a pinch of it and see if it does the effect that we want. Because we don't want it to fully color the white, we just want to give it a little bit of warmth. So actually, pinching is not going to work because it's very fine. So we're going to use our spoon and do just a tiny bit. If I can get this tiny bit. See, just a very small dusting of it. We'll see how that does. We can always add more, but we can't take it out. All right, so we have a very subtle color difference here. You can add more if you like. I kind of like where it's at right now because it gives it a little bit of shine and a little bit of off-white to it without being so stark white, but it also doesn't overpower our creamy color that we want. We've mixed in our color really well at this point, so now it's time to pour the soap into the mold. So I got this mold on Amazon. This is the one that came with the cutting tool. It's got a silicone mold that sits inside a wooden box to keep its shape. All right, so let's get started. We're going to take this out. We're going to pour the soap in from one end to the other. Okay, on to our next layer. We're on to our center layer of soap, which is the smallest layer, so it only took 30 seconds for it to heat up. I washed my spatula in between so I wouldn't get any chunks of the other soap on this one. So we've stirred it and made sure there's no solid pieces in there, so we're going to add our fragrance. This center layer is smaller, so we're probably only going to add a capful to this one. and stir it in well. We thoroughly mixed in our fragrance, so now we're going to move on to adding our colorant. We're going to use the dark brown mica powder. We're going to use just a little bit at first to see how rich we want this color to be. Like I said, the mica powders are very strong. So this one we are going to use more than we did in our last one because we want a rich color, but we don't want it to be more than we need. So let's start with just that much. Tap that in there and stir really well. So at this point, as I'm stirring it, I can tell that my soap is starting to thicken up a little bit. So at this point, if you notice that, you can actually go and stick it in the microwave one more time so that you have a thin consistency again. We've remelted our soap here, so it's a lot more thin, the consistency that we want to pour it. And after we've added more of the colorants and stirred them in, it's the nice shiny color that we're looking for. So at this point, let's clear off our spatula, set it to the side, and we're going to pour our soap base on top of this layer. Now, a really important thing to not forget is to add the layer of alcohol. So we spray the rubbing alcohol on there, and what that does is it helps prevent bubbles and it helps this layer to stick to that layer. So like our other one, we're going to start in the corner, gently pour it out over the top here, like that. And we've got our second layer. We've melted our soap in the microwave. It's the right consistency. So now we're going to add our green colorant for our top layer of soap. So at this point, we've got a pretty good profusion of colorant throughout the soap. We've got a nice light green. Next, what we're going to do is add our coconut to the soap. So I'll just pour that in and stir it in really well. So now we're all stirred. And at this point, we can actually pour it onto this layer. Be really careful moving it because it still is pretty liquid. So we're actually going to just change where everything's at. Now don't forget to do your rubbing alcohol in between. That's going to help those layers stick together. So we're actually going to pour this from one corner to the next, just like our other layers. On this one, we may not have waited quite long enough. Looks like the second layer of soap got into this one. But that's kind of the beauty of making soap, is there's always something that happens that you're not quite prepared for. So we'll see what it looks like when it's done. It might actually look pretty cool. We can spray the top layer with rubbing alcohol again to remove any bubbles that come up. At this point, we're going to have to let the soap sit for several hours, and we'll come back to it later. We've waited several hours for our soap to set, and it looks like it's ready. So I usually wait at least 5 hours or so just to really let it set so that when we cut it, it doesn't squish because we want it to be fully solid. So we take the silicone mold out of the wooden box. This is what helps the silicone mold keep its shape while the soap is drying. And now that it's solid, we can take this out and we'll actually fold the silicone mold away from the soap and release it onto our cutting board here. So we'll take the ends, peel those off here. We'll start with one end. And we have our soap. Let's see how it turned out. Let's see, fold this back, put it back in the box. And let's see what we got. Look at that. That turned out really well. It didn't turn out as translucent as I wanted, but it actually looks really cool. And the coconut shavings from the husk, they stayed on the top, which also looks really nice. You can see we have our brown line here. And then it did kind of bleed into the soap here, but I think that gives it character. So that's kind of one of the beauty things of making soap, like I mentioned earlier, is you never know quite what it's going to turn out to be, and if there's a mistake, it kind of looks unique. All right, let's get to cutting. Now we're ready to cut our soap. We're going to do it in roughly 1-inch pieces. What you can do is actually take a measuring tape and measure out 1-inch pieces, but I don't tend to do that. I tend to just eyeball it. You can do it however way you'd like. So let's start there and make sure you're even across, and then push straight down on the soap. And here is our beautiful coconut lime soap. In the description of this video, I'll have all of the ingredients we used, as well as a basic rundown of all the steps we used to make this soap. Thank you for watching.